Tracking. Now, before we proceed any further, I would like to discuss a few very important concepts that need to happen already during filming. So already during production phase, some things need to happen for your tracking during the post-production phase to work, okay? So during production, you're going to need to have the role of a VFX supervisor on set. It could be, and again, it depends on your budget, it could be a person dedicated as a VFX supervisor, or it could be a role. Somebody who does, in addition to what they do, does VFX supervisor, okay? That is really important, right? Because on set, it's very important that the VFX supervisor role, not necessarily the person, but the role is present. And preferably somebody who doesn't have too many things to do, right? So if the budget is limited, that person should not have too many things to do. I'm talking about small productions here, very small productions. If there's multitasking, so a person has several hats, and you think, well, we don't have money to get a dedicated VFX supervisor, somebody needs to do that because it requires some attention to detail. Now, what is the level of detail we're talking about? When we're talking about let me just reset this to number 1. This is going to be 1. Okay, when we talk about tracking, there are 2 very important things that we need to keep in mind, all right? I know that the VFX supervisor has a lot of things to worry about, but for tracking purposes, 2 are specifically critical, or very critical. And these are the presence of tracking markers. Now, in here, let me see, this is number 4. There are no tracking markers. So should the camera move, it is going to be really a nightmare to match move. All right, so a green screen without tracker is not a professional green screen. In this case, this video, the camera is not moving. This is a stock footage and the camera is not moving, so it doesn't make a difference. But I want you to get in the habit of always having markers on your green screen, even if the camera is not moving, because if after you decide to move the camera, then you don't need to stop and then if you remember it, because you risk to forget to add the tracking markers if you move the camera. But even if you remember it, it's going to be time consuming, and time during production is quite costly. So from the beginning, please have your markers. And your markers the location depend on the height of the actors, the movement, the zone where they're moving. Sometimes, well, it's preferable to have them outside the movement of the actors, but sometimes there's no choice. You need to have one. They need to walk in front of a marker. That's fine. That's like result plan B. It's okay. It's okay. You can paint it later, but if you can work with markers outside the zone, it's even better, right? Because you can remove them easier if you do it manually, or if you're going to do it the image-based keying way. It's part of the deal. It's part of the package. They get removed automatically. Okay, it's way better. But if you have no choice but to have the actor move in front of a marker, that's fine. Okay, there's a lot of movement. Now this is one. The markers need to be there. Let's have a look at some more footage. We have this one is 5. Okay, so we need to have markers. The second bit, let me just look, sorry, before the second bit, let me just look at other footage. Okay, we don't have markers. 7, no, that's a different story. That's a different story. Let me come back here to number 3. We don't have markers. Okay, so these are instances where we can have markers, but we don't have them. Now, what kind of markers would you have in here? Of course, it's not going to be manual, but it's going to be part of the picture that you're going to be displaying, and it just needs to be all sorts of circles and crosses and stuff, and in different color. Okay, in different color to the border, or sorry, to the background. My apologies, to the background where they are. And I'm going to talk about the background in the second part. But let's move here to these ones. Let's see number 7, for example. Now, sometimes it is not practical to use markers, like in here. Okay? This is going to be one of the exceptions where you think the second rule is enough. Now, the first rule is you need to have markers for tracking. The second rule is coming. It could be enough in this case, okay? And this is why the VFX supervisor, the eye of the post-production team, VFX post-production team, needs to be present during production to see and look at the shot. Yeah, okay, it will work. And in this case, it will work, okay? Let's have a look at other footage. 6, okay, you don't have tracking markers. If you want to track this, you don't have tracking markers. You need to have tracking markers. This is where it is practical to have them. You can have them, but you don't have them. So what is it going to be? It's going to be like a small tennis ball. Generally, it's about, you've got a VFX set, VFX supervisor set. You've got the half balls, you've got the full balls, you've got the white ones, you've got the tennis ball style. If you have nothing, you just use half of a tennis ball, because they have that shiny, not really shiny, it's just like it's an edgy green. It's quite contrasty, okay? It's very useful. You could use white markers, you could use whatever, but the idea is that we need to have markers. Same thing applies to shot number 9. Here, we can use some existing things on the airplane, but it helps to have markers, okay? So, and let me have a look. Number 8. Number 8, if you think you can put markers, fine, but sometimes this can act as a marker. Right, so you don't always need to have manually added markers. This can be a nice marker, but do you need one or do you need more? That's another question. Okay, so first part and the last one here is the, you need same story as in number 6 and 10 is about similar, same story. You need to have something that is in contrast with the background. Cool. Let's move to rule number 2, and it's contrast. It is the most important rule when it comes to tracking. The first one is presence, of course, of markers, but let's have a look at this. Number 5. Do we have enough contrast here? What do we mean by contrast? Contrast between what and what? Between the markers and the background of the markers. This is very important, okay? Let's have a look here. Number 3. Do we have enough contrast? The main point is you are going to find in some footage, and I'm just showing you a few of these. There's this one, there's number 5, 2, and 4. 5, 2, and 4. No, that is the wrong one, sorry. 5, 2, and 4. And that was not 4, that is 3. 5, 2, 3. Okay, 5, 2, 3. That's it. 2, 3, and 5. They all have the same mentality, the same way of thinking of we need to have green. There is no need for a green. What we need is a contrasty color. What is this? This is a black border. Okay, so what should be inside here? White, not green. And then you need to have your markers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 9, or depending on how many you need. You could live with 4 if you want. One here, one here, one here, but it's up to you, right? Circles, crosses, but the background needs to be in contrast to the borders. Let me have a look at number 5. Number 5, what do we have here? Same story here. We have gray, then why would you have green? You should have white, okay? Because then it contrasts with the border and it contrasts with the markers. Let's come to number 3. Number 3 is another example where you think, why are we using the green? Because this is white, then what you need to have here is black. I know, here you have some contrasty edges, okay, somewhat, but you need to have black inside here. And then the markers need to be in white. Okay, so white, black, white. Here, black, white, black markers. All right, so I want you to get in the habit of not following what you see mostly used in stock footage, or, I mean, yes, green is quite commonly used, but it's actually, it's got a purpose, it's got a function. It's meant to be something like this. Right, it needs markers, but this is why we use green screen, to key things. But when you're going to replace a screen, you don't need the green color, because you're going to use a corner pin tracker. And when you use the corner pin tracker, you are It doesn't really matter what kind of color you have, but it has to be in wild contrast with the contours, with the background. Sorry, with the marker and the background and the contours, okay, and the borders. So you've got three things that need to be in contrast. So I hope it is clear. I've used a few examples here where it's done, I would say not wrong, but it's not ideal. You have some sort of contrast, but nothing wins the white and black. Black and white, nothing wins that. You're not going to get more contrast than black and white. Okay, so then the next part, we're going to go and take one of these image sequences, videos. Now this is a video, and we're going to work with this one, and we're going to track. Okay, we will do now the tracking for this video, and we have a tracker node. There is tab tracker. We can do this and add a tracker node. Okay, and then when you double click, you get these parameters. It is too early to work with the tracker node now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just delete it. Why? We have said that there are two main rules for the tracker during production that we need to pay attention to so that the tracking during post-production works fast and everything is smooth. Okay, so the first step is to ask, do we have tracking markers? Number two, do we have enough contrast? And only then we can add the tracker node. So do we have tracking markers? Yes, we do. Do we have enough contrast? Let me say I'm closer to no than to yes. Okay, because what we should have done, what they should have done, it's just stock footage, what they should have done during production is to have here white. All right, so if this is gray, and if it has to be gray, fine, but this needs to be white. So we're going for a bigger contrast, higher contrast. I'm going to go for no rather than yes. Okay, you could go for yes and give it a try, but I'll go for no. And we're going to change this to what it should have been during production, white. Okay, so this is your first step. We're going to add a color correct node. You can use other color correction nodes, like color nodes, but I prefer this one because it has the parameters I'm looking for. All right, what do we want from this node? This node is going to help us achieve the contrast we want. Is it just about contrast? No. We need first to remove all the colors, black and white, saturation down to 0. Then we increase the contrast, because that's why we're here for, and then we go to the gain and increase it even higher. What do we see? We see a black border with a white background and black tracking markers. Your tracker is going to love this. Okay, so now we're going to add a tracker. But wait, you may be thinking, hold on a moment, we have just ruined the image and we're talking about tracking. What do we do with this? Like, okay, fine, the tracker is going to be happy, but what about the final output? Well, because this is a node-based, this is my original source. This part here is only for the tracker to work. And I can connect the color one anytime I want. See, I can connect this one and from here move on with the rest of the flow. All right, so let me go back now here and let's add the tracker. Now we bring in our node and we're going to add a few trackers. These are the parameters. I want you not to worry too much about these things and come straight here and add the first tracker, okay? You can tweak a few things here, but the default values, what I'm saying, the default values are okay to work with. How many trackers do we need? There are two things. The markers are one thing, and the trackers are another thing. You may have more trackers than your markers, which would mean that initially during production you should have had more markers, right? In this case, there are only 4 markers. Do we need more? There is a tendency to overdo it, of having more trackers, because it's said the more trackers you have, the more accurate the track is going to be. Not necessarily. If you do your homework properly during production and you get the right number of trackers and the right contrast, you don't need to have a huge number of trackers, okay? So I have tracker 1, 2, 3, 4, all right? What we're going to do is just delete the start one by one, okay? This is one. We're going to just put it here quickly. I'm going to place it properly later. I'm just put it there, and I will put it in the right place. This is not the way to do it. I'm just getting closer now. Now I'm going to zoom in to get it where it's meant to be. Right, now we go back. We select the first one and we zoom. So reduce this one a bit. And let's bring in, to move the image, you use the middle scroll wheel, the middle mouse scroll wheel, okay? All right, and to zoom in and out is the middle mouse scroll wheel, okay? But you can press on the scroll wheel to move it. All right, this is our pattern, and this is our region for search region. I am going to move this here, not here, here. I'll tell you why. Because I want to have my marker, all of it, inside the pattern. And if I move it here, I'm going to get a bit of the border. I don't want the border to be part of it. I just want to have the marker. The border is going to be taken care of by the search region. So I make sure that my border is included here, just to say that I want the search region to include this part. Now this is how I want to set it up, and it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to select the tracker number 2, bring it down here, increase this one to cover the marker. Same story here, cover the borders. Tracker number 3, quickly the same thing, and I'm going up because I want to be away from the borders. Increase this to cover it. And the same thing for the number 4. I'm trying to put the dot in a place where there is a difference, a really big contrast, and then have the full pattern included here. Good, okay. Is this enough? Absolutely enough. Now, we have given our tracker everything he wants. Tracking markers and wonderful contrast. So this should be quite simple. Now, remember, please, to select all of the trackers before you hit track. Otherwise, you may be thinking, oh, nothing is going on. What's because the trackers are not selected? We need to select them. And you come up here, you have track frame by frame. We don't want to do that, do we? You do it once you want to do it carefully, like it has let you down and then you want to correct it manually, you just start moving step by step, but I would rather go for track forward. Now, this is track forward. This is frame number 1. Actually, I'm standing on, yeah, this is number 0, which is 1. Okay. I'm at the beginning. This is the beginning. It doesn't have to be the beginning. You don't have to start from the beginning because you start where your markers are most visible. If it's in the middle or anywhere else, that's where you're going to start. And then what you need to do is track backwards and come back again to where you have started and go to track forward. Okay? But in this case, it's from the beginning, and I'll just click on track forward. Tracking has finished, and the next step is going to be to move to the Transform tab and change the motion type to Match Move, and Transform type, keep it at Corner Pin, because this is what we want, to have a corner pin. Right. Let me reduce this a bit and zoom out, and we will see what we get here. This is a rectangle with some dots, which clearly is a matter of moving them here. Now, we will not do this yet. There are a few things that we need to take care of before moving them, okay? So what we'll do is I need you to come here first, Transform tab, and then make sure that these are not to, but from, all right? So we're going to come to Overlay Points and set this to From. So these become now From, okay? Before we start moving them to here, we need to disable something. There's Disable Corner Pin. This is by default, it is unchecked. I need you to check it, okay? Because if you keep it unchecked and you move, it's going to distort the image. I need you to uncheck this, and then we can come and start moving these dots where they belong. Now this is moving a bit slowly because I've got the screen recording application as well, running at the background as well. I'll just move it like this, get a bit closer. Okay, what I will do, I will make a mistake here. Okay, let me deliberately make a mistake to show you how you can adjust it if you need to later. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just move it a little bit to show a bit of green. Okay, because it was initially green, and to give us a reason to adjust it later. Okay, so the 1, 2, 3 is okay, and the fourth one is with a mistake. We're doing it deliberately. Okay, what have we done? We have changed it. The moment you move these dots, you need to be aware of the frame you're standing on. I'm standing on frame 326. That is where I've changed it. Okay, but the reference frame by default in your case is going to be 1. Okay, the reference frame by default is 1. You either make sure before you move these dots that you are standing on 1, or it's okay, just make sure wherever you're changing these dots, whichever frame you're moving these dots on, you're going to use here. Reference frame, in my case, 326, so 326. Okay, so this is very important, otherwise you are going to have a misplaced screen. Okay, so this is now done. The next bit is to export. We are going to export a corner pin, right? This node here is what was going to get inside, so this is the content. So I will first bring in the content, but I have an advice for you in this case. You can bring in already your video, like, or your sequence of images, whatever you want to replace, like to put inside. But I strongly recommend that you start with a checkerboard. You can find it here, image checkerboard. This is brilliant for making sure that, let me show you what it looks like. It's a checkerboard basically. But when you do like this is very useful to check once you put your stuff that the proportions are okay, that the image has not been distorted. And nothing is better than a checkerboard to check that. Okay, so I'm going to come back to my tracker, make one here, double click on this, and I will add a merge node. Now we haven't finished yet. There are a few things that we need to tweak, but I want you to see what things as we progress. So I'll just tap M for merge and connect the background to the color image, and to the foreground A to the corner pin. Okay, what happened here? We did not set the frame rate right at the beginning. The frame rate 25 versus 24. So I'll just undo this, okay, and come back here. What's the frame rate here? 25. My project is 24. I need to change this to 25. Okay, so this is one of the things that need to happen in the beginning. All right, let's go back. Tracker, I'm now going to put A again to corner pin, and we have a merge node. I'll press 1 and we're able to see everything. But what happened? Well, what happened is that we are midway in the process and we can't see all of this. We cannot see the checkerboard in the right place. It's okay. What we need to do now is to come here to the corner pin, and from the front tab, we need to set to input region of definition. Once we click on that, then we get the checkerboard right, but it fills in the full screen. We need it just in the area we have selected. We go back to the tracker and we disable the corner pin. We just we uncheck disable. We uncheck disable the corner pin because we just did that to make sure that the image doesn't get distorted. And we click on compute. Once you click on compute, it jumps to where it's meant to be. Okay, let's get a bit closer here. We have exactly everything as we wanted, plus the deliberate mistake we have made. Now, what do I have here? I have to adjust this stuff. How do I do that? Quite simple. You just come over here and you push it. Okay, that looks a bit straightforward, does it not? Well, nothing changes. Okay, so when you push it, it's pushed, but you see that the screen did not update. And I still see my edges. And if I render it like this, it will come up with the green edge here. So you need to remember to click on Compute. The moment you click on Compute, it covers, it closes the gap. Good. And this is how you do the tracking. Now you're able to change your checkerboard with any video you want, and it's just a matter of placing it as the source instead of the checkerboard. But this is a good starting point for you to make sure that you have the proportions right. All right? Good. Let me go back to the first frame, and we are going to play this. Now, of course, you notice that these dots and this rectangle is displaced, not the checkerboard. The checkerboard is in the right place, but these are displaced. Why? Because their reference is at the end, 326. Okay, let me play this for you now. Actually, let me just frame it first and then play. I go back to the beginning and we play. Okay, that was it. Good. Okay, now you can replace this checkerboard with any image you want.